I moved into what I thought was just another quiet suburban neighborhood. Until I met Karen. She's the kind of woman who thinks she runs the entire block, complete with her fake HOA rules and wannabe cops patrolling like they own the place. Too bad she had no idea who she was messing with. I'm an FBI agent who doesn't take threats lightly. But what happened next? Let's just say things got a lot more intense than she bargained for. Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from today. And have you ever dealt with a neighbor who thought they were the police? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoy stories where entitled bullies get exactly what they deserve, hit that like button and subscribe. You do not want to miss the twist ending of this one. I woke up to a fierce pounding on my door, so loud that my windows seemed to rattle. Still half asleep, I hurried to the front hall, thinking someone might be in trouble. Through the peephole, I saw two people wearing matching uniforms with bright letters that read, HOA Police. Their badges looked cheap, like something from a party store, but they stood tall and glared at me with stern faces. My heart thumped faster than it should at dawn. I opened the door a crack and said, "Can I help you?" The taller officer, a man with a sharp jaw, pointed at me. "We're here on official business," he declared. "Your property has multiple violations, and we need to inspect your garage." I felt a surge of frustration. "What are you talking about? There's nothing in my garage that breaks any rules." The shorter officer, a woman with narrow eyes, shot back. "Don't make this harder. We have authority from the HOA." I noticed immediately they did not mention warrants or real police involvement. In a calm voice, I said, "I'm an FBI agent. If you have real cause, show me proper papers." That made the tall one smirk. Being FBI doesn't excuse you from neighborhood codes. Just then I saw movement behind them. Karen, my neighbor, peered over their shoulders with a smug grin. She had always been loud and pushy, complaining about every small thing on our block. I knew right away she must have staged this little show, and my gut twisted with worry. Stepping onto my porch, I kept my voice steady. "Karen, what's going on here?" She lifted her chin. "Oh, I'm just making sure the rules are followed," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "You can't claim special treatment because of your job." The fake officers nodded. "We have reports of strange activity in your garage," said the woman officer. I let out a tense laugh. "Strange activity? Like what?" Karen shrugged. "I heard noises late at night. Could be anything. You might be storing hazardous materials, or maybe you're plotting something." My jaw tightened. "That's nonsense, and you know it. If there's a real problem, I'll cooperate, but this is harassment." The tall officer pulled out a piece of paper that looked like a typed form. There was no seal, no signature, just words that said I was under investigation by the HOA Police. I tried to stay calm. "That's not an official document. You two have no right to barge in." Karen let out a dramatic sigh. "You sure you want to argue? I can add your refusal to the list of violations." I glared at her. "Since when does the HOA send out its own police force? I've lived here long enough to know. We only have volunteers who check on yards and paint colors." The shorter officer flashed a plastic-looking badge in my face. "We have new powers now. Step aside." I shook my head. "No, unless you come back with real law enforcement and a valid warrant. You're not entering my home." The man took a step forward. "Don't test us." I felt my anger spike, but I forced it down. As an FBI agent, I knew better than to start a physical argument on my porch. Instead, I crossed my arms. "If you try to come in here, you'll be the ones facing charges." Karen smirked again. "You can't threaten us." "Everybody on this street knows you think you're above the rules." Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Glancing at the screen, I saw my boss's name flashing. My stomach tightened. I had never gotten a call from him so early. "One moment," I told the fake officers, stepping back into my entryway. The tall man shouted after me, "We're not done here." Ignoring him, I answered the call. My boss's voice sounded strained. "Get to the office right now. We have a problem." My heart sank. "Is this about some complaint against me?" There was a pause. Then he said, "I'll explain in person." I hung up and walked back to the door. The two fake cops were still there with Karen towering behind them like she owned the place. "I have to go," I said. "I'll deal with this later." The woman officer shook her head. "If you leave, we'll mark you as uncooperative." Karen stepped closer, her gaze cold. "You want your neighbors to see you run away?" I sighed. "Karen, this is ridiculous. You know you can't arrest me." She tilted her head. "I'm not arresting you. They are, and I'm not stopping them." The male officer raised a pair of plastic zip ties as if he planned to cuff me. I had to remind myself to keep my cool. "Put those down," I said. "Impersonating a law officer is a crime. You know that, right?" The woman officer grabbed her radio, but I doubted it actually connected to any real dispatch. Karen clucked her tongue. "You might want to listen. They have the power to write you up." My jaw clenched. A fake citation means nothing. The tall man waved the zip ties in my face. "You want to find out if these are fake, too?" At that moment, I realized how far this had gone. They wanted to push me into doing something rash. It was a setup, plain and simple. I forced myself to stand down, taking a slow breath. "Look," I said, "I'm stepping away to handle an urgent matter at my real job. You all need to leave my property." Karen shrugged. "We'll be watching. The HOA has eyes." That made me bark out a laugh. "The real HOA might, but you sure aren't it." The male officer pressed his lips into a thin line. "We'll give you one last warning." Then he glanced at Karen, who nodded. "If you don't cooperate, we'll recommend disciplinary action." I glared at them. "Recommend it to whoever you want. Now get off my porch." They backed away, but not before the woman snapped a photo of me with her phone. Karen gave me a mocking smile. "Smile for the records." My stomach churned. I waited for them to step off my lawn, then slammed the door. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my boss. "Hurry." My whole body felt tight, like a spring about to snap. This was exactly what I didn't need, especially if something serious was happening at the bureau. Yet these phony officers had thrown my morning into chaos, and Karen's grin still lingered in my mind. It took me 10 minutes to calm down before I finally grabbed my keys and headed out. The fake cruiser was parked at the end of the street, its lights off. I noticed Karen's car was gone, which meant she might be prowling around elsewhere, possibly telling neighbors a twisted version of the story. I drove away trying to steady my breathing. My boss's tone on the phone had sounded dire, and that rattled me even more than Karen's antics. As I pulled onto the main road, I caught myself checking the mirror again and again, half expecting that HOA police car to follow me. But there was no sign of them. Still, I felt trapped between two nightmares. The phony cops who wanted to corner me at home, and something big looming at work. I reached the FBI field office and headed inside. My boss stood in the hallway looking stiff and anxious. "You took your sweet time," he snapped, then waved me into his office. I shut the door behind us, my heart in my throat. He demanded to know why local authorities were complaining about my threatening behavior. I explained the situation, emphasizing how those officers had no real badges and that Karen was behind it. He stared at me for a long moment. "Well, we have a problem," he said. "Higher-ups have flagged this. There's talk of misconduct, and I can't protect you if it escalates." My stomach dropped. "But I'm innocent," I insisted. "Someone's framing me, or at least trying to push me out." He rubbed his eyes. "I don't care if they're real cops or not. There's paperwork claiming you resisted a lawful inspection. It's all nonsense, but it's on my desk now." I felt a flush of anger rising up my neck. "Karen must have sent it. She's got some crazy plan." He let out a slow sigh. "Like I said, I can't do much if official complaints keep coming." "Keep your cool. Prove they're fake. Otherwise, you'll be dealing with an internal review." Panic flared, but I nodded, knowing there was no quick fix. As I left his office, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from a blocked number. "Better watch your step. We know who you are." I nearly crushed my phone in my hand. These people were trying to destroy my life, and now they had found a way to make it look official. I trudged through the day, haunted by the morning's clash and the sinking feeling that Karen had taken her petty rules to a sick new level. Even some of my coworkers shot me strange looks like they'd already heard rumors. Before I left for home, I stopped by the break room where an agent named Davis pulled me aside. "Got a second?" he asked quietly. "Sure," I said. He glanced around, checking if anyone was listening. "I overheard something in passing. Word is you're on thin ice. You might want to watch your back." My chest tightened. "You mean watch my back here or in my neighborhood?" Davis frowned. "Both, maybe. And I'd keep an eye on that Karen lady. She's bragging about getting you in trouble." By the time I left the building, the sun was sinking low in the sky. I drove home with my nerves on edge, wondering if those fake officers would be on my street again. When I turned onto my block, sure enough, I saw a strange SUV parked near my house. Its tinted windows made me shiver. I parked, got out, and eyed the SUV, but the engine was off and nobody stepped out. Keeping my breathing steady, I hurried inside, locked the door, and drew the curtains. Almost right away, my phone dinged with an email notification. It was from the Bureau's Internal Affairs team asking me to explain my morning altercation with the local security detail. I dropped onto my sofa in a daze. Karen had found a way to link her phony patrol with real authorities, and now my job was on the line. I got home later that day and saw the same fake HOA police cruiser idling at the end of my street. My pulse sped up as I parked, but I forced myself to act normal. Once inside, I peeked through the blinds. The car stayed put, like it was daring me to confront it again. I checked my messages, hoping for a response from the real HOA or some sign that Karen's hoax was collapsing. Instead, I found nothing but a bounced email and a threatening voicemail. The muffled voice warned, "We know you're digging. Back off or this gets worse." That single line told me Karen wasn't alone in this plan. The next day I tried calling the official HOA number listed on an old newsletter, but my call went straight to a recorded message about technical difficulties. Frustrated, I fired off an email titled Urgent, Possible Impersonation, only to have it bounce back as undeliverable. It felt like Karen had shut down every communication channel, leaving me with no official recourse. I decided to reach out to a local police contact named Alvarez, a no-nonsense officer who sometimes traded intel with the Bureau. Over the phone, I summarized the situation. Fake badges, bogus citations, and a neighbor leading the charge. Alvarez sounded skeptical, but promised to investigate the license plate of the so-called HOA vehicle. "If it belongs to a private security firm," he said, "they can't legally act as law enforcement." As I waited for Alvarez's callback, the tension in my own block kept rising. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to before now whispered behind their fences, eyeing me like I was the villain. One morning, Tamara, one of the few people who still talked to me, knocked on my door, looking pale and frantic. "They left this on my porch," she said, holding up a notice demanding a fine for unapproved paint colors. "It says I'll be evicted if I don't pay." My anger flared. "No, this is a scam," I said. "Don't pay them. I'll figure this out." But she only shrugged, fear in her eyes. I can't risk losing my home. If nobody's stopping them, then maybe it's real. Meanwhile, work at the FBI became a minefield. My boss called me in for an update, his voice tight with frustration. "I'm getting more reports of your conflicts with local authorities," he said, tapping a folder on his desk. "Care to explain?" I did my best to detail Karen's phony cops and show him the worthless citations they had slapped me with, but he frowned. "If they claim to be private security, I can't make all this vanish. Higher-ups are asking questions, and they're not pleased." That left me feeling cornered, even if the so-called HOA police were fakes. The noise they made was echoing at the Bureau. Every day, I worried about an email or phone call telling me I was officially under investigation. One evening, I spotted Karen standing in her driveway, arms folded as she watched me pull in. I stepped out of my car and marched straight up to her, ignoring the nervous flutter in my stomach. "We need to talk," I said. She just raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." I kept my tone cool. "You've set these fake officers on me, and now you're targeting innocent neighbors. Why?" She flashed a thin smile. "It's not personal. People around here forget that we have standards. I'm just making sure we enforce them." I clenched my fists at my sides. "By scaring everyone? That's not how this works." She shrugged. "They don't seem scared to me. They pay the fines. They follow rules. And life goes on." My anger simmered. "What's your end game?" She tilted her head. "End game? I'm just cleaning up the neighborhood. You're the one refusing to cooperate." Before I could respond, one of the faux cops strode over, giving me a stern look. "Move along," he ordered. "We have business with Ms. Karein." My jaw tightened. "You have no legal authority here?" He lifted a flimsy badge and smirked. "We're all the authority we need." Rather than argue, I stepped back, not wanting to give them another excuse to file a complaint. Karein shot me a final smug glance before they walked off together. A few days later, Alvarez finally called back. "That plate belongs to a private security outfit. But I can't find any license contract with your HOA, he said, sounding more certain now. "They're acting without approval." I let out a breath I'd been holding. "This is proof they're not real cops," I said. "But how do I tie it to Karein?" He hesitated. "I can't dig deeper unless there's an official complaint on file. And so far there isn't." My frustration boiled over. "This is an official complaint. I'm telling you, they threatened me on my property." Alvarez sighed. "I believe you, but I need statements from other neighbors who will back you up. Otherwise, it's your word against theirs." I realized then how carefully Karein had cultivated fear. No one wanted to stand against her. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I was summoned to a brief meeting by a supervisor from Internal Affairs. She asked pointed questions about my aggressive behavior with local authorities, referencing a typed report full of half-truths. I stated my side of the story, but she simply tapped her pen on the folder and said, "We're reviewing all angles." My chest felt tight as I left her office. Even if I was telling the truth, the repeated complaints made me look like a liability. Karein was winning this round, using her phony goons and fake citations to undermine my credibility. I went home to find a crumpled flyer jammed under my wiper. It read, "HOA Police Volunteers Needed." It listed a meeting date and Karein's address. The bottom of the page mentioned a membership fee to cover uniform costs. I shuddered at how blatant it was. If even a handful of people fell for her pitch, she'd have an entire squad of bully enforcers roaming the block. The next day, my boss called me. "But we need to talk ASAP. Be here first thing tomorrow." My mind spun with worst-case scenarios. I drove to the FBI headquarters with my pulse hammering, bracing for the worst. When I reached the conference room, an agent I barely knew opened the door and led me inside. At the long table sat a panel of higher-ups, each wearing a stern expression. My boss stood near the back, arms folded, looking grim. An older agent cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss the numerous complaints against you. They involve alleged threats to neighborhood authorities and repeated refusals to obey local laws." My heart pounded. "Those authorities are fakes," I said, fighting to keep my voice calm. "Their badges aren't real, and the HOA never approved them." One of the panelists lifted a thick file. "We have statements from at least 10 neighbors claiming otherwise. They say you bullied them." My blood boiled. "I have documents proving this is a setup." The so-called HOA police belong to a private security firm with no legal standing. Suddenly the door swung open, and in walked Karein. She wore a suit, not her usual casual clothes, and carried a sleek briefcase. My mouth fell open in shock. "What is she doing here?" I blurted, my voice raw with disbelief. One of the agents cleared his throat. Ms. Garrett has submitted evidence on behalf of the local enforcement group. My mind spun. So Karen was invited to testify against me in an official FBI inquiry. She stepped forward, calm and collected. "Good morning," she said, sounding far too polished. "I represent the interest of our community. I'd like to correct a few misunderstandings." Karen opened her briefcase and produced a neat folder. "These files include reports from the Neighborhood Watch," she explained. "They show repeated noise complaints, suspicious activity, and even a few alleged break-ins linked to this agent's address." I bristled. "That's a lie," I snapped. She continued without missing a beat. "We asked him many times to cooperate with our volunteer police program, yet he refused, claiming we lacked authority." Then came the twist that made my jaw drop. The older agent turned to Karen and said, "Before we proceed, we should disclose your family connection." Karen gave a curt nod. "Yes, of course." She glanced at me with a pitying smile. "My uncle is the deputy director of this bureau. I tried to handle this matter quietly, but when your behavior escalated, I had no choice but to bring it to his attention." My stomach lurched. The deputy director was near the top of our chain of command. If he was her uncle, that explained everything. How she shut down the real HOA's lines, how my neighbors felt powerless, and how she'd managed to file official complaints that reached my supervisors so fast. I was standing alone, cornered by her well-placed influence. The meeting ended with a promise that internal affairs would launch a formal investigation. I walked away feeling like I'd lost ground. Karen beamed at me on her way out, murmuring, "Better watch your step." I drove home from that inquiry feeling like the floor had dropped beneath me. Karen's influence reached the top of the agency, and I was now under an even darker cloud of suspicion. My boss tried to assure me we'd figure something out, but his voice held little conviction. The second I stepped inside my house, my phone buzzed with a text from Tamara. "They're at my door. I'm scared." My heart pounded. I rushed over to Tamara's house on foot, sticking close to the shadows. Sure enough, the so-called HOA officers were parked right in front of her place, engine running. As I crept up behind a hedge, I saw them on her porch, pounding on the door. The taller one yelled, "Open up or we'll mark this as another violation." My anger flared. These bullies had gone too far. I cleared my throat loud enough to get their attention. One officer turned, face twisting into a scowl. "You again?" he muttered, grabbing at something on his belt. I held my ground, raising my voice. "I'm FBI. This is intimidation. Leave her alone." The other officer reached for a phone. "That line won't save you any more. We have friends in high places." Tamara cracked the door open, eyes wide with fear. "Please just go," she whispered, trembling. One officer whipped out a form. "We need you to sign this statement, confirming that your friend is harassing the neighborhood." My pulse jumped. They wanted her to turn against me. Furious, I stepped forward.
"Back off."
"She's signing nothing." The second officer shoved me and I stumbled onto the porch steps. Before I could fully regain my balance, the taller one pulled out his plastic zip ties, a nasty smirk on his face. "I'd be careful," he warned. "One wrong move and we'll file assault charges." Suddenly, a voice behind us said, "What's going on here?" I turned to see Alvarez, the local cop I'd contacted before. He must have been off duty and checking on the area. Relief swept over me as he approached, badge out. The fake officer stiffened, clearly unsure how to play it. "Ma'am," Alvarez addressed Tamara, "are these men trespassing?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, they won't leave." Alvarez nodded at me. "I got your text about suspicious activity." He faced the officers. "Show me some identification." The taller one flashed his phony badge, but Alvarez didn't even blink. "That's not official," he said. "I want a driver's license right now, or you're both coming in for questioning." The officers glanced at each other, then one stammered. "We have the right to be here, authorized by the HOA." Alvarez crossed his arms. "You don't have the right to threaten a homeowner who's telling you to leave. This is private property." He radioed in a request for backup, which made them turn pale. The taller man sneered at me one last time before they hurried to their cruiser and drove off. We had survived the night, but I knew Karein wouldn't stop. I needed to end this at the source. The next morning I found a slip of paper in my mailbox. Meeting tonight at the community center. Mandatory attendance. I knew this was it. Karein was gathering the neighborhood to solidify her power. I grabbed a recording device, texted Alvarez, and headed to the center. When I arrived, the place was packed. Rows of folding chairs were set up, and most of the neighborhood was already there, murmuring among themselves. I saw Karein near the front holding a stack of papers. Two of her fake HOA police stood off to the side like bouncers. Karein stepped up to the podium, her voice ringing out with forced cheerfulness. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. As you know, our community has faced some challenges lately. That's why I took the initiative to establish our new HOA, Police, to ensure a safe and orderly neighborhood." Applause erupted from a handful of supporters while others exchanged nervous glances. Karein continued, "Unfortunately, we've had some resistance from a few individuals who don't respect our community standards." Her eyes darted toward me. I couldn't stay quiet any longer. I stood up. "That's a lie," I said loud enough to make heads turn. Karein's smile faltered. "Excuse me?" I stepped forward, projecting my voice. "Your so-called HOA police are not legitimate. They're part of a private security group with no legal authority to issue fines or citations. You're running a scam, Karein." A few gasps rippled through the crowd. One of the fake officers moved toward me, but I held up my badge. "Federal agent. Touch me and you'll regret it." The officer hesitated, glancing at Karein for guidance. I pushed forward. "These goons are nothing more than hired muscle. Karein's been intimidating and extorting neighbors, making them pay bogus fines and threatening them with eviction. It's illegal." Karein's face flushed with anger. "You're just bitter because you can't handle following rules like everyone else." I pulled out my phone where I'd saved screenshots of Alvarez's findings. "This is proof that your HOA police are unlicensed and unauthorized. The security company they work for has no contract with our community." One man stood up, looking shaken. "Karein, is that true? Are they not real security?" Karein faltered. "They are volunteers." I seized the moment. "Volunteers don't have the right to detain people or issue fines. And you've been pocketing the money." Pointed to a pile of papers on the table next to her. "Let's see those citations. I bet they're all as fake as your authority." People started moving forward. Karein tried to pull the papers away. "That's confidential." But a neighbor snatched one and held it up. "This doesn't look right at all. There's no official seal, no signature." The tension hit a breaking point. One of the fake officers backed away, muttering, "I didn't sign up for this," before bolting out the door. Suddenly, Alvarez appeared at the entrance with two uniformed officers. "Everyone stay calm," he announced. "We're conducting an investigation into unauthorized security practices and possible extortion." Karein's face drained of color. She tried to compose herself. "This is harassment. I have connections. You can't do this." But nobody backed her up. Her fake authority had crumbled. Alvarez walked up to her. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me for questioning." Karein sputtered as he cuffed her. Tamara approached me, eyes shining with relief. "You did it," she whispered. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The official HOA audit confirmed Karein had been pocketing fine money. Her uncle, the deputy director, denied knowing about her scheme, but the scandal was enough to put him under heavy scrutiny, and he quietly resigned within weeks. A few weeks later, my boss called me into his office. He gave me a long, considering look, then offered a rare smile. "Turns out you were right all along," he said. "Internal affairs cleared you. Karein's actions were deemed illegal and unauthorized. You're back on track." Relief washed over me. I walked out of the office, finally breathing easy. My neighborhood was back to being just that, a neighborhood. No more fake cops, no more phony citations. Just peace. I'd survived the storm and taken down the woman who thought she could turn a quiet suburb into her personal kingdom.